I wonder if the strong fruit is going to be a lesser cousin of the quake fruit, possibly turning Burgess into the Hulk of One Piece. Spoilers for Wano. However, as of chapter 1063, Burgess is the user of the strong fruit. Burgess is also one of the 10 Titanic captains, a former helmsman of the Blackbeard pirates, which I guess he still has that position, and he is the captain of the first ship of Blackbeard's armada. So, with all that being said, the reason why I'm starting to think that the strong fruit could end up being a cousin to the quake fruit is because, one, in Dressrosa, in which Burgess is fighting to claim the flame fruit, he performs a move called Wave Motion Elbow, in which he can generate a shockwave upon impact using his pure strength alone. This is kind of interesting because in the anime, his arm does vibrate before he performs the technique. So that does remind me of the quake fruit a little bit because it's just vibrations on a massive scale pretty much. So keeping that in mind and keeping in mind that Burgess is the captain of the first ship, it makes me wonder, how much does Blackbeard trust Burgess? Because it's also very interesting that he was even sent to Dressrosa to claim the flame fruit, because that seems very oddly sentimental, because if it wasn't for Ace, essentially, Blackbeard wouldn't be where he is right now. So it's very interesting that he sent his most trusted crewmate, the captain of his first ship, to go out to claim the power of the man who made him who he is today. And I think that's weirdly interesting because it parallels with a conversation that Luffy has with Frankie, someone who's built very similarly to Burgess in that very arc, because Luffy also offers the flame fruit to Frankie, but he turns it down. However, thinking about the fights in Dressrosa now, he does have very odd quake fruit-like tendencies, because he does do two things that I do think are going to be upgraded in the future by the strong fruit. And this is why I think he is destined to be the Hulk of One Piece, because he does two things in Dressrosa in his various fights with Sabo that are very reminiscent of abilities that the Hulk can do and are very reminiscent of what the quake fruit has been able to do, because in both situations he has techniques that produced shockwaves, and one of them is a shockwave that acts similarly to a flying sword technique, of which Zoro and various other characters have done in the past. But no character that I can think of, unless we're talking about Elizabello II, has performed a technique like this by just punching. But even with Elizabello, it takes him a while to charge up. So the first one is Shockwave Elbow, or Wave Motion Elbow, in which Burgess produces a shockwave upon impact. And this was strong enough to knock back a huge flying fish in the Cordelia Coliseum. The next one is the more impressive one, which is called Galleon Lariat, in which he just swings his arm, and that arm swing produces a shockwave powerful enough to cut through a building while he's fighting Sabo. So thinking about that now, that's pretty impressive for someone who didn't have any abilities at the time. However, now with the strong fruit, I think comparing Burgess to the Hulk and to the abilities of the quake fruit isn't unfounded, because in Marvel Comics, the Hulk could produce a move called the Thunderclap, which creates this high pressure air blast that can do a variety of things. So right now, even without a Devil Fruit, Burgess is doing something similar. So I can only imagine once he utilizes his fruit with these techniques that we see in Dressrosa, they will be amplified greatly, and they are very similar to those of the quake fruit as well, because the quake fruit basically is the vibration fruit, and in the anime at least, Burgess does vibrate his arm when using the wave motion elbow or the shockwave elbow. So I do compare the abilities that we see of Burgess to the Hulk and the Quake fruit in that way. And in speaking about the Hulk, I do wonder if Burgess is going to mimic some abilities that we see various characters do in the Dressrosa arc. Because, first of all, there was a guy named Elisabello. Elisabello was very famous for his punch. Said punch was said to be able to knock out an emperor, and that was called the King's Punch. He had to charge up, but once it was charged up, it could do a number of amazing things, like blow back the remains of Pika's big stone body that were falling to the land below after Zoro cut him up. And he did this in one fell swoop. So seeing as how he could do that with one punch, and he is a normal human, I could imagine now Burgess doing something similar, given that he has the strong fruit. Another very interesting ability that we see someone have, and I don't know if you could call this an ability, but it is something interesting. We have the Funk brothers, right? Not Kelly Funk, the guy who was a weird skin suit, thanks to the Jacket fruit. Not him, Bobby Funk, his brother, because Bobby Funk had this weird muscular body. Bobby's body was so strong, in fact, that it's able to defeat Arm Hockey, because when Bobby was shielding his brother Kelly from Boo's attack, Boo's axe broke. That axe was imbued with Arm Hockey at the time. So I'm thinking now, keeping Bobby Funk in mind, I wonder if Burgess could do the same thing. Could he now contest against Conquerors or Arm Hockey coding with simple strength? Is it that serious, I wonder? And keeping the theme of Dressrosa going, there was another guy by the name of Adeo, whom, like Boo, is now a part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. However, the interesting thing about Adeo is that he is a long arm tribe member, and his punches were very explosive, as his long shoulders were actually his arms that he kept tensed up in order to launch out at high speeds. So, keeping that in mind, I wonder if Burgess could do the same thing. I guess in a way mimicking the Hawk series of attacks that Luffy can do by just punching so fast and so strongly that he ignites the air in front of him. I wonder if that could be an effect of the strong fruit. And the reason why I'm giving all these examples is because the strong fruit has to be something simply remarkable in order to be a devil fruit, because in all the examples I'm giving, I'm showing you that in One Piece, you have a lot of normal people who are exceptional, whom just have super strength. So for there to be a devil fruit dedicated solely to super strength, it has to be special. Even if it encompasses all these other guys, it has to be so fantastical that it puts their natural abilities to shame by being able to do them with ease and then some. However, another good example of muscle usage is actually our leading man himself, Monkey D. Luffy, because in Dressrosa, we have the unveiling of Gear 4th Bound Man via the use of the activation technique Muscle Balloon. So I wonder if Burgess can perform his own Gear 4th in a way, or at the very least, the whole weird one gorilla, two gorilla technique that Zoro sometimes does, in which he flexes his arms. Maybe Burgess can have this weird full muscle control about him, and he can become 4 or 5 or just several times bigger than he normally is, and then all of his techniques increase tenfold from that point. I can see that being a possibility as well, because there has to be more to him than what we've seen already. And I'm very excited to see what actually happens for him in the future, given that now we are in new territory with a devil fruit that is full of possibilities. Lastly, talking about the Hulk and Zoro again, which is funny because they're both green, but in various forms of media, I have seen the Hulk propel himself via using thunderclaps, and he can also jump very long distances. So perhaps these are also abilities available to Burgess thanks to the strong fruit. Another very interesting thing, bringing it back to One Piece, that we see Zoro do is that he can perform a move called Clear Lance, in which he just slashes at the ground, creating a strong shockwave that can propel him upward. And we see this when he's fighting King, and he does this technique to avoid falling off of Onigashima. So I could see this being a possibility for Burgess as well, in which he can just perform these big thunderclap-like movements in order to propel himself out of the way of an attack or to propel himself forward. Or, like I said with the Hulk, maybe he can just super jump. But, however, with that being said, if you are enjoying the video so far, give me a like. And if you want to see more from me, click the subscribe button followed by that bell so you never miss a video. In addition to, hit the hype button because it really does help. With that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Blackbeard. What?